Yo, why do I always do this at the intro of my videos? AuthenticTalks back. So let's get some good camera shadow here. Let's set up the lighting nice. But okay, what is this video about? It's actually gonna be very short. Hopefully it's cool. But oh wait, but then the 0.5 looks bad. All right, let me cut to the chase. All right, so downstairs I was with my parents, or I was washing dishes, and me and my parents were watching this new TV show called Stick. It's like really fun, it's a really good film. Anyways, it mixes like this old guy, and then like these younger guys who are playing golf. Kind of, that's not the whole plot. And so it creates this like it creates like this anyways, there's new lingo in the TV show, like slang and stuff. And so my dad was like, yeah, it mixes the Gen Z into it as well. Anyways, because I was talking about classic films and old films. And then and then it made me think like, oh yeah, I guess he's talking about like, modern life, because it is modern life. So it's for him, it's like for him, it may not feel like modern life because he grew up in a different time period, like when he was I guess adolescent. And so it made me think how like all these different time periods, and like how his dad, my grandfather, who's still alive, would say the same thing to my dad at one point in his life, and then my dad says it to me, or like he says it not necessarily to me, but yeah. And so it made me think like there's different time periods. I was like, you know what, maybe the 80s would be, because the other day I was thinking like, damn bro, I have like nothing going on in life right now, or like there's like highs and lows in life, and it can get pretty like boring at times, and I feel like I have nothing to do. I'm like, damn, why couldn't I be in the 80s when like it seems like kids were always running, or like my age kids were always running around, fooling around and stuff, and it seemed kind of fun. But then I was thinking like, I guess there's always pros and cons to different times to live in. Like maybe I wouldn't like the 80s, like even though I really like it, like we never see like the bad side to it, in the sense that, and we overlook the pros we have. So I was thinking about like the 80s or the 90s. I don't even know if it's the 80s or the 90s, but just olden times basically. I don't know, but like the 80s, I like to say. And so so I was thinking, right, like I guess what would the compromise be back then and versus now? And like, cause like it feels like there was a greater sense of community back then between like kids my age versus like now everybody's kind of more like isolated, or more like everybody's kind of more disjointed. I don't know what the word would be. Yeah. And so it made me think like, I guess like back then maybe like the kids, the adolescents, their relationships with their parents are like, or for the majority is like fucking shit, and like their dad beats them with a belt whenever they're bad or whatever. I don't know, like, and he has a shotgun and a wife beater tank top, and he's not great, and he's an alcoholic or whatever. And then and then it made me think, right, or like continued my thought of like how we always overlook the pros. Like right now we don't know what we have until it's gone, in the sense that I don't realize that like, damn, like those kids maybe in the 80s would die to be in my position right now, where they actually have a relationship with their parents, which is probably one of the more important, it is one of the more important aspects in life, to have a good relationship with those who care about you the most. You would hope that they care about you the most. And I'm sorry for anybody who's not like that. Obviously, I know I'm very fortunate in that regard, but regardless, that's a bit of a tangent, or not a bit of a tangent, just a little tangent. But so my main point was that we overlooked the pros, and then I was like, and then I was thinking like, parents like back then, like I guess they weren't like amazing, like I'm guessing, or like the relationships weren't amazing. And then is this recording? Okay, if you've, and then I was thinking how, what was I thinking after? So the parents. Oh yeah, and then I was thinking like I guess there have to be the best parents ever, right? Like what would the best parent, like who would the best parents be? Like, and I was thinking like maybe some royal kid with like lots of money, and their dad always spoils them or whatever. And like, nah, that couldn't be it. Like the kid wouldn't have an amazing relationship, and it'd be kind of fabricated. And then I was thinking like, damn, like, bro, my parents have done a pretty good job, I would say, and I'm pretty happy. Like I don't think it could get much better than that. And so and then in that moment while I was washing the dishes, they were behind me talking, trying to get the chia seed. I was like, oh, you know what? One thing I realized is whenever you have a compliment, or like something that somebody would be nice for them to hear, we usually avoid telling the person who would need to hear it the most. And that goes far beyond just compliments. That goes to the truth. We usually avoid telling the person who needs to hear it the most. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll tell my parents right now and then. It's gonna make their day. It's gonna make their like year, whatever. It's good for them to know. Probably more important for me to know, because they need to know how good of a job they've done, or how good of parents I think they've been so far. Though at times it was rough, but no, regardless, there's ups and downs to everything. No, I was joking about that, but Well, it was rough, obviously, but not like the way I was explaining it, regardless. Yeah, so then I started telling them, and I was like, and I realized they were making their chia pudding, for the next day, and I realized that like they didn't know what I was going to tell them, and so I didn't have all their attention, and so I could very easily start telling them. They're kind of distracted, half listening to be kind to listen, and and then I could get really offended because it's like I wanted to tell them this thing that was super important and they weren't listening, but they have no clue. And so I was like, all right, so there's this book I'm reading, A Man's Search for Meaning. One of the big things he talks about is you can't ever, there's not a lot, like basically everything you can control can be taken away from you out of control. But the only one thing that can't is how you react. So how do I react? Well, first off, I was just like, all right, well, what can I control? I can control when I tell them. And because right now their attention isn't on me, or like, because I want to tell them this thing that's important. I can control when I tell them. I'll wait for them to finish the chia, and I'll continue with finishing washing the dishes. And yeah, so then I waited for them to finish, and then I said, guys, I have something really important to tell you. Full attention. That's a really good way to get anybody. Like, let me ask you something. They're focused now. They're in. You've pulled them in. Anyways, but that's like a bit of like psychology, or like, yeah. So then I told them, they were super happy to hear it, and yeah. Yeah, so there's a few big takeaways from that little thing I wanted to record, experience. The thing where it's like you can't control a lot of things, but you can control how you react. Also focus on the things you can control, not what's out of your control. You don't need to get offended because of it. Yeah, you need to pick your timing right, and also you need to be grateful for what you have, because there's a ton more things that I have right now that I have no clue. But once they're gone, probably like my dog's one of them. Once they're gone, I'll definitely notice that I had it. I wish I had been more grateful. So yeah, yeah. Anyways, hope you like that one. Leave a comment, don't like, and do subscribe. Ciao.